So according to Farzad and a lot of other people, the robots are coming. But according to ARK Invest, the robots are already here. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. ARK Invest published their Big Ideas 2024 pamphlet, PDF, whatever you want to call it, a few days ago, and I just wanted to touch on a few slides here today. This is really, really fascinating stuff about robots and specifically humanoid robots. And in case you've been living under a rock or something, not only Tesla with Optimus, the Tesla bot, but many other companies, including Figure, Sanctuary, Agility, and on, are doing humanoid robots right now. So this is very pertinent. I have said before, and I'm going to continue repeating this, that 2024 is going to be the year of embodied AI, and this just adds fuel to the fire. So let's start with this slide. Of course, I will leave a link to the entire presentation in the description so you can check it out. It's very long and you should definitely look at it. There's a good chance that I will do other videos on ARK Invest's big ideas, so definitely subscribe and hit the bell notification icon if you haven't done that yet so you can catch those other ones as well. So let's start with this really interesting slide about Amazon specifically. So you can see back here that they had 88,000 employees in 2013, and look at how many employees they have now, 1.5 million employees. That's kind of a crazy number. But of course, what we're interested in is the number of robots, and the sort of purple color thing is the number of robots here. So you can see the number of employees has increased pretty substantially up through 2021, but then it's actually gone backwards. In 2022 was the high water mark, and they actually reduced the number of employees by a little bit in 2023. And what's interesting, of course, is that we went from about 1,000 robots here in 2013 to over 1 million robots in 2023. Estimated, of course, there's a little asterisk by that, so they don't have the full numbers here at this point, but you can see that they more than doubled between 2022 and 2023. So the number of robots in Amazon warehouses and stuff doing pretty tedious jobs, more than likely most of them, as we're going to see in the next slide, do pick and place type of work, which is, pick up an item from here, put it in a box for shipping, something like that. Very tedious work, but something that was difficult to do before robots had brains, because it's got to be able to look at items, it's got to be able to figure out what it is, and then it's got to be able to pick it up, physically move it through space, and put it in another place. That's something that old industrial robots just are not designed well to do because they don't have the brains. They're sort of blind. They just, they do the same motion from here to here to here to here over and over again, or spot weld or whatever, but they don't really know if they're doing it right or not. Whereas these more intelligent robots that are coming online in the last 10 years, and especially in the last couple of years, and especially in 2024 and going forward, are going to be able to do much more complicated tasks. And so what we're seeing here is an evolution of both the mechanism of the robot, but especially of the brains of the robot, allowing it to do more and more work in places like Amazon warehouses. And so you can see there's a direct result of this is that we had 1.6 million employees in 2022 at Amazon and 1.54 million employees in 2023, while we saw robots go from about 520,000 to over 1 million. So it basically doubled in 1 year the number of robots. And when we get the figure for 2024, there's a good chance there will be more robots working at Amazon than humans in 2024. So that's pretty crazy. And so speaking of that slide, as I said, we're going to talk about pick and place, which again is just, you look for, like, I want to get a computer mouse or something, right? So I order a computer mouse on Amazon, I click the button, and previously a human being would go and they would scan and they'd go like, okay, this is the computer mouse that he wants. I'm going to get the box. I'm going to go put it in another box. Maybe I ordered 3 other things at the same time. They go pick up those other items, they put it in a box, and then maybe they seal it up or something like that, and off it goes to the shipping area. Pick and place, boring, dull, repetitive, but it also requires vision and a brain to make it work. Dumb robots can't do this, which of course is why human beings have always done this type of a task, even though it's a pretty thankless job. And so, as ARK Invest says up here, advances in computer vision and deep learning have improved robot performance 33-fold in 7 years. That is nuts. It's not 33%, 33x. Robots are already surpassing human performance by greater than a factor of 2, and it's unclear where the upper limit will be. That is a very important factor. So this is all looking backwards. These are all basically factual, assuming that they have their facts correct. But you can see that this is sort of like the human benchmark here. So this is like what a human can do in an hour. And you can see back here in 2015, a robot could do, I don't know, what is that, 10%-ish of what a human could do. And so if you look back to 2015, which is less than 10 years ago, that's 9 years ago, a robot could do maybe 10%, it looks like approximately, of what a human could do. 2016, better. 2018, better. 2019, pretty close to what a human could do. 2022, 2 times or more than what a human can do. So in 1 hour, as you can see, if I'm drawing this line correctly, a robot can pick and place about 1,000 items, while a human being is on the order of the low 400s, maybe 430 or something like that. And of course, human beings are not going to get better. So it's not like that human number from 2022 is going to get better and better and better. Humans are basically as good as we are at doing that. Maybe some individuals are fantastic and they can do it faster, but the average is going to remain somewhere around 400, 450 items picked and placed per hour, whereas the bot in 2023, 2024 could be looking at maybe 1,500, maybe 2,000 per hour or something. And if that's the case, again, as Ark says, they don't even know what the upper limit is. So these things may be able to pick and place at something like 10 times what a human can in the next few years, in which case human beings are pretty much useless for that job, because you can hire one robot, which would be able to replace 10 human beings at that point. Right now, you can hire one robot, or purchase one robot that will replace 2 human beings in this sort of circumstance, as you can see right here. But as Ark says, they don't know what the upper limit is. So is it 4 times what a human can do, 5 times, 10 times, more than 10 times? If it's something like 10 times, then you're replacing 10 workers with one robot. So what we would actually see, if we go back to this slide back here, is that we would see the number of employees plummet, right, from 1.5 million to 1 million and lower than that, because many of the employees are just people in warehouses doing pick and place. But we might not see the number of robots grow all that much. They might only get up to 1.2, 1.4 million or something, and then they might actually come down somewhat, because as the robots get smarter and smarter, they can do the job better and better. So what might happen is that we might actually see the number of robots also decrease over time, or it will continue to increase, and Amazon will be so fast at fulfilling orders that you'll get your order before you even ordered it. It's going to like read your brain and know what you wanted. And you'll be like, boy, I really could use one of those ding dong, and the things there. And you're like, whoa, how did it know that? Right. So that's the kind of crazy thing that could actually happen in the future. And I know that's not specifically robotics, but it is based on AI. All of this stuff is because these robots are becoming more and more intelligent. They're able to see the world. They're able to interpret the world. They're able to move through the world. They're able to interact with the world in a very flexible way. And that very same AI can suck in the data about us human beings, and it can start to figure out what we want before we want it. So I could see, within the next couple of years, Alexa kind of going like, hey, I was thinking you might want to have this. And you're like, wow, that's the thing I was going to think of in about 1 day, that I wanted something like this, but it's already figured out what I want. And I just say yes, and it goes ahead and goes out and gets it. And I could maybe get it in half a day or something if I live in an urban environment. So this is the kind of nutty sort of future we could be talking about. And of course, some of that is based on the mechanics of these robots and everything. That is getting better and better, and that's really fantastic. But the big part of this, the major breakthrough right now, is that the brains are getting so much better, so much faster than we assumed. And then we get to a slide that is going to be near and dear to Scott Walters' heart, which is cobots, or collaborative robots, are entering the sweet spot of the adoption curve. If you don't know that, that's that classic S curve that goes up, and around the 10% mark of adoption is where you go from early adopters, bleeding edge adopters, to early adopters, to then into the mainstream. And the curve goes from pretty flat to very, very fast as it goes up to like 80%. So like 10% to 80% is a very rapid adoption curve. And that's just where we are. If you notice that in 2022, cobots were just about 10% of unit sales of robots in the United States. So again, if we look back, 2017 is not that long ago, right? It's 6 or 7 years, depending on how you want to look at that. But we have a tiny percentage of cobots, of collaborative robots, being sold back then. And this is going up. And in 2022, we've got this much, and it doesn't look like that much, but we're getting to the point where new sales are around 10%. And so this bar graph in 2023 is going to be, maybe we're talking about getting up to here in 2023. And if it doubles like in 2023, and then doubles again in 2024, and doubles again, we're going to be up to like 80% of these new robot sales are going to be collaborative robots, which means that all of these companies, again, Tesla producing Optimus, but also Figure, Agility, Sanctuary, etc., all of these companies that are producing robots right now, this demand is going to be quasi-infinite, because we're going to be replacing these traditional dumb robots with collaborative humanoid type robots that are much, much smarter. And not only are we going to replace this, so like Tony Seba says, he always says a butterfly is not just a caterpillar with wings. It's a very, very different thing. So we're not going to just be looking at cobots replacing these traditional robots, but cobots expanding the idea of where robots can be. So not just in, the big picking up heavy items or doing spot welding or something like that. We're going to be going to pick and place. We'll be going to putting things inside cars at automobile factories. They'll be able to do fine motor work like putting phones together or widgets or whatever it is. They'll be able to put things together in final assembly and stuff like that, which has always required human beings. So we're going to be looking at cobots replacing traditional robots, but also just growing what it means to be a robot working in a workplace and also at home eventually as well. And table that thought for just a minute because I'll get back to that in just a second. But first, let's take a little walk down memory lane here. Automation's impact on productivity has transformed industries. So time to do laundry before washing machines. That's probably before most of us were born. But anyway, time to do laundry was about 15 hours per week, and now it's about 2 hours per week. And with, more advances in technology, I could see that continuing to go down. But that's an 87% decrease in the amount of time that somebody who doesn't have to do that work anymore. Either, a person in the household, husband or wife or something like that, or someone that you hire in to do that who is relatively expensive working 15 hours a week. Also, we see time to manufacture a car has gone from 12 hours to about 1.5 hours per vehicle with the assembly lines. So that, of course, is thanks to Henry Ford and working on that. But you get a massive, massive reduction in the amount of time it takes to build a car, which means that it costs less money to purchase a car. I mean, the labor cost involved in building things is often more than the raw material cost to build that thing. So when you get an 88% reduction in the amount of time it takes to build something, that thing can be sold for cheaper. And of course, if we go back to Amazon and we talk about how quickly these robots can pick and place, that also is part of the labor of, quote unquote, making this thing. It's not making it, but it's delivering it to you. So it's part of the process of getting that item from concept to built in the factory, to shipped to a warehouse, to picked and placed, and then shipped to you, and then you get the item. All of those things add cost, and everywhere that you can reduce time and that you can make things more efficient and faster, it saves money. And of course, speaking of that, time from click to ship at an Amazon warehouse. So remember, this percentage time, this is all about money here. You're going from somewhere around 68 minutes previous to the introduction of the Kiva robot down to about 15 minutes after the introduction of the Kiva robot, or about a 78% reduction. That is huge, and every one of those minutes is saving money for Amazon, which means they're either making more profit or they're passing on that savings to you, and probably a combination of both. They're pocketing some of that, but also passing on the savings to you, which is the reason, of course, why it's difficult for brick and mortar or even other online retailers to compete with Amazon, because they're so fast. And if it takes somebody else 60 minutes to get from click to ship, somebody is getting paid for that amount of time, and you've got more stuff sitting in the warehouse. All of that kind of stuff compounds, and that means that you have to charge more money or you take a loss. Same thing with automobiles. If Tesla can manufacture a car faster than VW or Toyota or whoever, that means they can make it for cheaper because they can push more cars through the factory in a given amount of time, which means they're amortizing all the costs of the labor, the factory, all of that kind of stuff gets amortized over more cars, and that means that they can sell those cars for cheaper and or make a bigger profit on them. And then finally, let's get to the big numbers here. Generalizable robotics represent a potential $24+ trillion global revenue opportunity. That's a big number. So we're going to look at two different things. ARC has sort of broken this down into household robotics and manufacturing robotics. So household robotics don't directly create value, but they indirectly do. So you can see, for example, there's about 2.3 hours of unpaid work per day in a household, times about 2.8 billion working age population human beings, times about a $10.75 weighted average hourly wage, and then you take a half value attributed to free time versus paid time. So basically somewhere around $5 or $6 an hour, you're paying people to do this. Now, nobody actually gets paid to do their own laundry or something, or cook their own dinner, or clean the house, or whatever, but it is time that could be spent on other things, either free time, which is valuable in its own way, or productivity time. You could be be doing work or something instead of doing these other things. So because of the large numbers here, we're looking at about a $12.5 trillion opportunity according to ARK Invest. So that means if we can get some humanoid cobots into the house in the next 5 years, whatever it is, those things come into the house, they start doing your laundry entirely, and your laundry time goes down from, what was it, 2 hours a week, I think now, right? It was already a huge reduction. It goes from 2 hours a week average down to basically 0 hours a week, because the robot collects your laundry, puts it in the washing machine, puts it in the dryer, takes it, folds it, and then puts it back on the hangers or in your dressers or wherever it needs to go. So you can just forget about that 2 hours you don't have to deal with. And then what if you spend like 3 hours a week cleaning things, right? Vacuuming, washing stuff, whatever. You can get rid of that. What if you spend 5 hours a week cooking and all of that, and the robot can do that? You can get rid of that. So that's either more free time for you to enjoy your life, or it's time that you could be doing productive work, making money doing something else. That is assuming you still have a job, because one of the problems with this is that these robots could be coming to take your job. And then we get to this slightly hard to read table over here, manufacturing robots. ARK forecasts global manufacturing GDP at about $28.5 trillion in 2030. And the TLDR down here at the bottom, it's about a $12 trillion opportunity. So around about the same number as household robotics. They're coming at this through an interesting way of thinking about it. So they have a take rate, which is basically, okay, in 2030, do we have 10% take rate of humanoid bots? Do we have 20%, 50%? That's the items that are going down the column like this. Then we have productivity uplift. And what does that mean? How fast is the bot compared to a human being? So if they're only 10% faster than a human being, I think that's what it is. I think it's an uplift. So it's like a one-to-one comparison. If they're just a little bit faster than a human being, you get this. If they're 25% faster, more efficient, whatever, they can work more hours, things like that. So it doesn't just have to be that it's faster, but maybe it can work more hours. So if you hire a person in for an 8-hour shift, usually they get at least a half-hour lunch and 2 15-minute breaks. So you're only actually getting them for doing 7 hours of productive work. So even if the robot is working at the exact same speed as a human, you're going to get an uplift of effectively an extra hour, because that thing's going to work a complete 8-hour shift without any breaks. But anyway, if you go 10% uplift, 25%, 100% would mean it's like double, like twice as good as a human being, and then 200%, 400%, etc. So they've taken these sections in here of a take rate of like 20% and 50%, and then an uplift of 50%, 100%, 200%. So this is where they think the sweet spot is. That's where they think the likelihood is for the uplift and take rate of humanoid bots. And then they've averaged all these numbers out, and they come up to about 12 trillion, which just so happens to be about the same number as household robotics itself. So where does all this get us? This gets us back to the point that Tesla and other companies that are making these humanoid bots are going to have a massive effect on the economy, and it's not going to take that long. We're looking at just the next couple of years. By 2030, we could be talking about $12 trillion in the household and $12 trillion in GDP from factories and things like that. So these are massive, massive opportunities. They're the GDP of large countries, not just of individual companies and things like that. These are just huge, huge numbers that we're talking about. And as ARK Invest notes here in their report, and as I've been saying, this is the year of embodied AI. This is where we're really going to see a huge uptake. So interestingly enough, this is where the revolution usually happens. It kind of happens at the lower end of things, like tedious, dull, drudgery kind of work that is relatively low paying. That's the kind of thing that was replaced by the loom, by the washing machine, by the vacuum cleaner, et cetera, et cetera. Those kinds of jobs were displaced from human beings to some sort of mechanized entity. So that's what these embodied robots are doing. But interestingly enough, at the exact same time, and this has never happened before in history, we're also getting pressure from the top down. We're getting the creative jobs like writers, illustrators, copy editors, people like that. We're getting this sort of revolution that's happening bottom and top and squeezing together at the same time. So this is a massive revolution, and by 2030, I really do think the world is going to be kind of unrecognizable. It's sort of, for those of us who are old enough to remember pre-internet days, it's going to be like in your brain going like, what was the world like before these very intelligent collaborative robots were just in the household and in the factory with me and walking down the streets, walking your dogs or whatever that is. Speaking of things that take time, I mean, I enjoy doing that because it's some exercise exercise, but if you don't, that could be a half hour a day or something like that that you save walking your dogs if your robots can do it. So that's another time saver. But I'm just saying we're gonna have a world that is extremely different than what it is right now, and it's not that far away. And by the time we get there, it's probably going to be difficult for us to remember what it was like and go like, gosh, could we really live before we had these robots doing all this work for us? It's like thinking back to like 1978 or 1980 or something like that, well before the internet, and imagining what it was like. It was like just knowing somebody's phone number or something was complicated and having to look it up in the white pages and trying to remember their last name if you couldn't remember it, not being able to look up information on the internet. You had to go to the library and take out an encyclopedia, which was only updated every couple of years. So, very difficult to stay current on facts, very difficult to communicate with other people. You didn't have knowledge at your fingertips. It's just difficult to imagine living back then right now. And this is the exact kind of thing that I think we could have as soon as about, 7 or 8 years from now. We could be looking at a situation where we're just like, damn, how did we live back in 2024 before these robots were all around doing all of this stuff for us? And of course, let's not forget that the real winners in this whole thing are going to be the manufacturers of these robots, because they're going to either be able to sell or lease them to both consumers and to factories, and have massive fleets that, as Elon has said, is basically unlimited, because once we sort of fill up the world with these things, we just ship them off planet. We send them to the moon, to Mars, and on outward from there, and they can just continue to replicate and grow forever. So as I said at the beginning, the robots are not just coming, they're already here, but they're going to be here in a lot more quantity in the next couple of years. All right, so that's what I got. What do you all think? Definitely let me know in the comments, and please do like and subscribe if you're able. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.